In the dim candlelight of our engagement dinner, with soft music and warm smiles all around, my fiancé calmly announced, "I need a break to reconnect with my ex." In that instant, the words crashed over me like a tidal wave, erasing every dream of forever we had built together. My mind spun, my heart pounded, and a cold, unyielding betrayal cut through me. That moment of quiet revelation transformed our love into an unbearable weight, and I knew then that I had to call off our engagement. For years, I had believed that our love was unassailable, a fortress built on shared laughter, whispered promises, and dreams of a future we both envisioned. We had planned every detail of our life together, the engagement ring that sparkled with our hopes, the wedding invitations we had carefully selected, and the quiet moments of intimacy where our hearts spoke volumes about our commitment. I had poured my soul into every aspect of our relationship, sacrificing comfort and security to nurture a love that I believed would last a lifetime. Yet, that fateful evening, as we sat at a beautifully set table surrounded by friends and family, everything changed. My fiancée, normally so vibrant and full of hope, had a distant look in her eyes, a look that foreshadowed what was to come. When she uttered those four small words, "I need a break," it felt like a final, devastating verdict. I was left stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the woman I adored with the person now confessing doubts about our future. The room, which moments before had been filled with warmth and celebration, suddenly felt cold and alien. Every gentle note of the piano in the background, every soft clink of cutlery on china, became an echo of a promise broken. In the immediate aftermath, I struggled to understand what had happened. Had I not been the partner she wanted? Were my efforts to build a future together not enough? I replayed every memory of our relationship in my mind, every shared secret, every midnight conversation about dreams, every moment of tenderness, and I couldn't fathom how our love had come to be so fragile. The revelation hit me with the force of a betrayal I never anticipated. The thought that she wanted to reconnect with an ex, a man from her past, felt like a betrayal of our entire history. How could she even consider revisiting something so old, so laden with unresolved emotions, when we were on the cusp of our new beginning? As the shock began to subside, I retreated into a silent turmoil that lasted long into the night. Alone in our once shared apartment, I sat in the darkened living room with only the hum of the city outside to remind me that life still went on. My mind raced with questions. Had I been blind to her unhappiness? Did I miss the subtle hints, her occasional distant gazes, the texts she deleted before I could see them, the quiet sighs when I asked about her day? Each question was a painful stab, each memory a reminder that perhaps our love had been crumbling all along, unnoticed until it was too late. I spent hours scribbling in my journal, the pages filled with raw emotion and unshed tears. I tried to understand the fracture, the moment when the dreams we had woven together unraveled into chaos. My words were at first anguished and fragmented, mirroring the broken pieces of my heart. Yet, as the ink flowed, I began to see a pattern, a silent accumulation of doubts and unmet needs that I had dismissed as normal relationship struggles. The idea that she wanted a break was not merely a pause, it was a deliberate act of distancing herself from our future together. And in that revelation, I saw my own truth. I deserved more than half-hearted efforts to salvage a love that no longer felt complete. In the days that followed, I found myself caught in a limbo between despair and a reluctant clarity. I avoided mutual friends, too embarrassed to face their sympathetic glances. Every familiar corner of our shared world, a favorite restaurant, the park where we had first met, even the quiet coffee shop where we had once laughed until dawn, became a painful reminder of what was lost. I was overwhelmed by an intense sense of isolation. It was as if the life we had planned together was evaporating before my eyes, leaving behind a void filled with unanswered questions and a deep, gnawing emptiness. Yet even in that darkness, a spark of resolve began to form. Late one sleepless night, as I reread an old love letter she had written to me, a letter brimming with hope and promises of forever, I realized that while I could not force her to stay, I could choose what to do with my own life. I could either let this heartbreak define me, or I could use it as a catalyst for rebirth. I began to see that the betrayal, as excruciating as it was, offered me a moment of radical self-discovery. I had spent years building my identity around our shared dreams, and now, with those dreams shattered, I was forced to confront who I truly was, independent of anyone else's validation. That morning, as I stared blankly at the remnants of our life scattered around the apartment, I made a silent vow. I would not let this moment of betrayal break me. I would channel the raw pain into a determination to redefine my future, a future where my worth was not measured by someone else's loyalty, but by my own courage, resilience, and the capacity to rebuild. I resolved to embark on a journey of self-healing, to rediscover my passions, and to build a life that was authentic and true to who I was. The pain was immense, yet it became a crucible in which my future self would be forged. With that promise echoing in my heart, I began taking the first tentative steps toward rebuilding. I scheduled long walks in the early hours of the morning, where the quiet solitude allowed me to sort through my thoughts and rediscover the strength I had once taken for granted. I reached out to a close friend, someone who had always seen beyond the surface of our shared relationship, and poured out my confusion and hurt over cups of coffee in a dimly lit cafe. His understanding nods and gentle words, "You deserve someone who cherishes you completely," provided a small measure of comfort and validation. I also turned to the written word. I began writing daily, first, as a cathartic release, and then, gradually, as a way to chart a new course for my life. Each journal entry was a declaration of independence from the past, a step toward reclaiming my identity. I wrote about the betrayal, about the quiet moments of despair, and about the fierce determination that now pulsed within me. I envisioned a future where I would rebuild my life from the ground up, a future where I would explore new passions, take on new challenges, and ultimately, define my own worth without the shadow of her rejection. That period of introspection, though marked by heartache, also sparked the emergence of a quiet defiance. I began to see that the end of our engagement was not just a painful conclusion, but also the beginning of an opportunity, a chance to invest in myself, to rediscover who I was, and to build a future that would honor every sacrifice I had made. The betrayal, as deep as it cut, was now a driving force that propelled me toward self-reinvention. In those raw, solitary moments, I started to piece together a new vision for my life. I dreamt of travel, of exploring places that would help me rediscover the beauty of the world, and of pursuing passions that I had long set aside. I vowed to enroll in courses that would expand my horizons and reconnect me with the part of myself that had once believed in limitless potential. Every small goal, every step toward that new life, was a defiant stand against the bitterness of the past, a promise that I would not be defined by someone else's failure to love me completely. As the days turned into weeks, I began to feel a subtle transformation taking hold. The overwhelming sadness slowly gave way to a burgeoning sense of purpose. I reconnected with old hobbies, started exercising regularly, and even ventured out to new social gatherings, where I met others who had faced their own betrayals and emerged stronger. Their stories, their resilience, inspired me to believe that I too could transform my pain into power. I realized that while I could never erase the memory of that fateful evening, I could choose to let it fuel a rebirth that would redefine my very existence. Now, as I stand on the precipice of a future that is as uncertain as it is promising, I feel a quiet determination pulsing in my veins. I have learned that betrayal, however devastating, can be the catalyst for profound personal transformation. I am ready to reclaim my self-worth, to redefine my dreams, and to build a life that is unapologetically mine. The journey ahead will be long and undoubtedly fraught with challenges, but I now carry within me a steadfast belief that every heartbreak is merely a prelude to a triumphant resurgence, a future where my worth is determined not by the shallow judgments of others, but by my own inner strength and resilience. In the days after that humiliating moment at the hotel lobby, I found myself retreating into a world of solitude, a personal exile where the echoes of that cruel dismissal reverberated with every heartbeat. The shock and sting of being publicly shunned, left without a reserved room while my wife's friends snickered behind my back, sent me spiraling into a quiet abyss. I spent hours in my tiny apartment, its four walls now feeling more like a cell than a sanctuary. Every morning, I awoke with a heavy heart, the memory of that cold, indifferent voice lingering like a ghost. I questioned everything. Was I not important? Had I been so easily discarded from our shared life? The sense of isolation was overwhelming, and for a while, I allowed myself to wallow in the bitterness and pain of that moment. I began to sift through my thoughts and memories, trying desperately to understand how something I had once believed was secure, our commitment, our partnership, could crumble so suddenly. I flipped through old photographs of happier times, sunsets over the beach house we had often talked about, laughter shared during family gatherings, and quiet moments where promises were made under starlit skies. Each image was a bittersweet reminder of the life I thought we had, and with every glance, the betrayal felt even more profound. It was in that solitude that I started writing in a worn leather journal, a habit I had abandoned in recent years, in hopes of capturing the raw, unfiltered truth of my emotions. At first, my entries were chaotic scribbles of anger and despair. I wrote about the sneer of the security guard, the mocking glances from strangers, and the crushing moment when I realized that my wife's indifference had rendered me invisible. Every word was laced with the weight of rejection, and with every tear that blurred my writing, I felt the deep ache of not being seen. But slowly, as I poured my heart onto those pages night after night, something unexpected began to happen. A seed of defiance was taking root. I began to notice that within the depths of my pain, there lay an untapped reservoir of strength, a quiet, determined voice that insisted I was more than this humiliation. One rainy evening, when the patter of water against my window provided a melancholic soundtrack to my thoughts, I decided I couldn't remain a passive victim any longer. I reached out to an old friend, Mark, a steadfast companion who had always been a source of clarity when life seemed overwhelming. We met at a small, dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the city. Over steaming cups of coffee, I recounted the events of that day, my voice trembling with both sorrow and a growing defiance. Mark listened intently, his eyes soft with empathy and understanding. "You've been through a hell of a lot," he said quietly, "but you're not defined by one moment of rejection. You're stronger than you know. This is your chance to rediscover who you are and what you're capable of." His words resonated deep within me, sparking a slow but steady flame of resolve. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to envision a future where I would reclaim my dignity and rebuild my self-worth, step by painful step. After that conversation, I started to make small changes. I re-established a daily routine that nurtured both my body and my mind. Each morning, I rose before dawn and took long, solitary walks along quiet streets, allowing the crisp air to clear the fog of despair from my thoughts. In the soft, pre-dawn light, I repeated a mantra to myself: "I am more than this moment, I am the architect of my own destiny." With each step, the burden of that humiliating day began to feel a little lighter, and I started to sense that perhaps my future wasn't entirely written by that one act of betrayal. At home, I tackled the clutter that had accumulated over months of neglect. I sorted through old books, photos, and trinkets, each item a relic of a past filled with happier memories. As I organized my belongings, I discovered not only forgotten treasures but also a renewed sense of self. I realized that while the rejection stung, it also offered me an opportunity, a chance to rebuild my identity from the ground up, to shape a life that was defined by my own choices and not by the shallow judgments of others. I began to channel my raw emotions into creative pursuits. I dusted off my guitar, something I hadn't played in years, and started composing melodies that expressed the turbulence within me. The music was rough and unrefined at first, raw notes that captured the pain, anger, and defiant hope that had been simmering beneath the surface. Over time, each chord struck became a small victory, a symbol of my determination to turn hurt into art, and sorrow into a stepping stone toward healing. Simultaneously, I took a hard look at my professional life. I had always prided myself on my work ethic and my contributions, and the memory of that day at the hotel had spurred me to prove that my value extended far beyond a single moment of public humiliation. I began to throw myself into my projects with renewed intensity. Every meeting became a stage for me to assert my ideas, every presentation an opportunity to showcase the creativity and competence I knew I possessed. Slowly, as I started to see positive results, a nod from a colleague here, a compliment from a client there, I began to reclaim the respect that had been so callously stripped from me. In the midst of this internal and external transformation, I also started to write a new chapter on my personal blog. I shared snippets of my journey, not with the intent to seek pity, but to inspire others who might have faced similar betrayals. The responses were unexpectedly heartening, messages from readers who found solace in my honest, unfiltered words. Their encouragement helped me see that my struggle was not unique, that many had been bruised by life's harsh blows but had managed to rise again. It was a small community, but it reminded me that I was not alone, and that my voice had the power to reach others. As weeks turned into months, the initial sting of that day slowly began to fade, replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. I wasn't just surviving, I was beginning to thrive. Every small step, each new morning walk, every strum of my guitar, every project completed at work, became a declaration that I would not be defined by my wife's callous actions or the ridicule of her friends. I was crafting a new identity, one that was built on resilience, self-respect, and the unyielding belief that my worth was mine to define. One particularly transformative day, I took a solo trip to a nearby coastal town, a place that reminded me of the beach house we once loved, but now symbolized my own path to renewal. Walking along the shoreline, I allowed the rhythmic crashing of waves to wash away the remnants of past hurt. In that expansive, open space, I felt a sense of liberation and a deep connection to the natural world, a reminder that even after the harshest storms, the tide always brings new beginnings. That day, as I watched the sun dip below the horizon and painted the sky with brilliant hues of orange and pink, I vowed to myself that I would never again allow the actions of others to dictate my self-worth. I resolved to build a future defined by my own dreams, to embrace the uncertainties of life with courage, and to transform every setback into an opportunity for growth. By the time I returned home, I was a changed man. The despair that had once consumed me had been replaced by a quiet, persistent defiance. I began drafting a list of goals, ambitious plans for my professional and personal life that would serve as stepping stones toward a future where I was in control. I set my sights on furthering my education, expanding my career, and even exploring new creative outlets that would allow me to express the depths of my experience. Every goal was a promise to myself, a promise that I would reclaim my identity and rebuild my life piece by piece. Now, as I continue on this arduous journey, I hold close the lessons learned in those dark days of isolation and heartbreak. I have discovered that while pain may never completely vanish, it can be transformed into a powerful force for change. I have learned to listen to the quiet, defiant voice inside me, a voice that insists I am worthy, that my future is mine to shape, and that every moment of despair is simply a prelude to a triumphant comeback. I stand at the threshold of a new chapter, each day a small victory in the long road to healing and self-discovery. My journey is far from over, and I know there will be challenges yet to come, but I embrace them with a renewed spirit and a determination forged in the crucible of betrayal. With every step I take, I am building a future defined not by the shallow judgments of the past, but by the limitless potential of my own resolve, a future where I can finally say, without hesitation, that I am enough. I awoke to a sunrise that seemed determined to outshine the darkness of my recent past, a brilliant, unwavering promise that today would be different. That morning, as I opened my window and welcomed the cool, fresh air, I felt a stirring deep within, a slow, resolute heartbeat of hope and renewal. I had spent long, agonizing days cocooned in the despair of being left out on our family vacation. The memory of that cold, dismissive moment, the security guard's deadpan, "Your name is not on the list," and the cruel laughter of my wife's friends, had haunted me relentlessly. But now, as the golden light crept over the horizon, it was clear that I was no longer defined by that rejection. Instead, I had begun to forge a future that belonged solely to me, a future where every ounce of betrayal was transmuted into the strength and vision to reclaim my self-worth. In the weeks since that day, I had embarked on a journey of quiet defiance. I spent countless mornings on solitary walks along empty streets, each step a reminder that I was not vanquished by the humiliation that had been thrust upon me. The gentle rhythm of my footsteps on damp pavement, the cool whisper of the early wind, and the promise of a new day all combined to create a healing cadence that slowly began to soothe the raw edges of my pain. I found solace in the simple act of observing life as it awakened around me. Witnessing the transformation of the night into day was like a metaphor for my own rebirth. I repeated to myself a mantra that had become my anchor: I define my worth, I rise above every slight. With each sunrise, that conviction grew stronger, steadily replacing despair with determination. At home, my once stifling apartment gradually transformed into a sanctuary of self-affirmation and creative renewal. I cleared out every remnant of the past, discarding items that reminded me too painfully of what had been lost, while carefully preserving those treasures that echoed with memories of love and personal triumph. I repainted the walls in a bright, hopeful shade of blue, and each brushstroke felt like a silent proclamation: I was reclaiming my space, my identity, my future. Photographs of happier times now hung alongside inspirational quotes I had collected from books on resilience and renewal. Every corner of that apartment became a testament to my decision to rise above humiliation and rebuild my life on my own terms. The professional world, too, began to mirror my personal transformation. Determined to prove that my worth was not dictated by a single, humiliating incident, I immersed myself in my work with a vigor that surprised even my most supportive colleagues. Every meeting became a platform for me to articulate new ideas, every project a chance to demonstrate my creativity and leadership. I volunteered for challenging assignments that pushed the boundaries of my expertise and began to see the fruits of my labor: a series of successful projects, accolades from once skeptical peers, and even a few nods of admiration from higher-ups who recognized my renewed spirit. Each small victory in the boardroom was a step towards silencing the echoes of ridicule that had once haunted me, affirming that my value was inherent and self-defined. Yet, amid the professional wins and the quiet joys of personal rebirth, I never forgot the sting of that fateful day. There were moments, late at night when the city's distant hum turned into an eerie silence, when I would find myself revisiting the memory of that callous moment at the hotel. I recalled the security guard's flat tone and the sneers of my wife's friends as if they were etched in stone. But with each recollection, I also saw a glimmer of defiance, a reminder that their shallow judgment had ignited in me an unstoppable drive to reclaim my dignity. I began to write again, pouring my thoughts and emotions into long journal entries that slowly transformed into essays and, eventually, a blog chronicling my journey from humiliation to empowerment. The act of sharing my story, raw and unvarnished, not only became a therapeutic release but also connected me with countless others who had faced similar betrayals. Their messages of support and shared experiences were a powerful reminder that I was not alone, that the pain of rejection could be a crucible for forging an even stronger sense of self. One afternoon, as summer was giving way to the gentle embrace of early fall, I decided it was time for a definitive act of reclamation. I organized a small gathering, a quiet dinner with a few close friends who had stood by me through the darkest moments. In the soft, intimate glow of the dining room, I shared my journey, my struggles, and the lessons I had learned about self-worth and resilience. I spoke about that day of humiliation, not with bitterness, but with a clarity that turned pain into a source of strength. I was left out, shunned, and made to feel invisible, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. But in that darkness, I discovered that my worth isn't defined by someone else's shallow perceptions, it's something I build, day by day, with every choice I make. Their nods and quiet affirmations filled the room with a warmth that slowly began to heal the old wounds. That night, as I listened to the gentle hum of heartfelt conversation, I felt a profound transformation, a deep sense of connection and purpose that reassured me that the betrayal was a chapter in my past, not the entirety of my story. As I continued to rebuild, I set my sights on long-term goals that would redefine my future. I enrolled in courses to hone my skills, attended workshops on innovation and leadership, and even started exploring new entrepreneurial ventures that had always lingered as ideas in the back of my mind. With each new step, I felt the old insecurities fade away, replaced by a growing belief in my own capabilities. I invested in a small project, an endeavor that combined my passion for technology with my desire to create something impactful. Every setback in this venture was met with a renewed determination to learn and adapt, reinforcing the idea that every challenge was an opportunity to grow. Through it all, the memory of that humiliating day remained a bittersweet catalyst, a stark reminder that the path to self-discovery often begins with pain. Yet, rather than allowing it to hold me back, I chose to let it propel me forward. I realized that every rejection, every mocking laugh, was a stepping stone to a future where my worth would be undeniable, a future where I would no longer be defined by the shallow judgments of others, but by the depth of my own vision and resilience. In the final stretch of this journey, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation as I began to see the contours of my new identity emerging from the shadows of my past. I no longer felt the crushing weight of exclusion. Instead, I carried within me a quiet strength born of countless small victories, a strength that allowed me to look the world in the eye and declare, with unwavering conviction, that I was enough. Now, as I stand at the threshold of a new chapter, I know that the road ahead will be filled with challenges and moments of lingering doubt. But I also know that I have the power to define my destiny. My self-worth is no longer a reflection of someone else's disdain but a mosaic of every struggle I have overcome, every lesson I have learned, and every dream I continue to pursue. The beach house, once a symbol of our family's unity, may be lost, but the memories and the lessons it carried remain, reminders that even in the face of profound betrayal, there is always the possibility of renewal. Today, with a heart that has been tempered by adversity and a mind brimming with newfound purpose, I embrace the future. I will continue to nurture the passions that define me, to build a life that celebrates resilience, and to forge relationships grounded in mutual respect and genuine care. Every new sunrise is a blank page, a chance to write a story of hope, courage, and transformation. I am no longer the man who was cast aside. I am the architect of my own destiny, ready to build a legacy that will stand as a testament to the power of the human spirit. As I take my first steps into this brave new world, I whisper a promise to myself and to all who have ever felt diminished by betrayal. I will rise, I will rebuild, and I will shine brighter than ever before. And with that unyielding resolve echoing in my heart, I step forward into the light of a new day, undaunted, unstoppable, and finally, truly free.